Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today I wanted to revisit components, but in quite a bit more detail. Now first off, this video is going to be looking at spreadsheets a little bit, so probably not super visually appealing, but it is going to be consolidating a lot more information here than would be possible really doing this in any other way. Also, I've got this spreadsheet currently available as a shared web doc, but I'll also be embedding this on the redacted website at some point in a more extended write-up. So if you want a link to that when I get that up and running, follow me on Twitter and I'll post that when it's ready. Otherwise, check the description of this video for the web link for what I've put together so far. So with that in mind, let's run through what I've done. Now, I spent some time running around and checking the 3 locations you can buy components from in 3.0.1, which those being Dumper's Depot locations on Alizar, Gremhex, and Levski, all of which have different inventories and marked where you can kind of find those different components. Additionally, I've also collected all performance numbers displayed on each item, and I have those documented here. Now, the goal was to show you the better performing items in different categories so that you can then start to customize your ship to your liking. For example, my Saber personally comes with stealth class components like most of them, but I prefer it from a flight model and weaponry perspective over stealth, so I've gone to more military components to get more power and performance for the ship. Now, a few notes before we get in would be that the prices are going to be the same at all locations. Now, I imagine that's going to change once salvage and supply and demand come into play, but for now, you can buy at all the locations at the same price. Also, the grade of components will eventually play a factor on how reliable these components are, and is going to dictate how often they break, but that isn't in the game today. That does play a factor when it comes to class as well, though. So, where industrial is going to have lower wear issues, but competition is going to take more abuse, that's just not in. I also have quantum drives in this list, but the max spool distance only plays so much of a factor right now because everything we have today is in range. But once the system gets opened up, it'll be a bigger deal. Alright, so here's where we start getting into the spreadsheets, and the one that I got online is a little bit prettier in a way, though it doesn't necessarily have the sorting and things that are in place, but I'll get to that at some point. So basically what you see here is I've got power plants, shields, coolers, quantum drives, and then my overall recommended builds. So to really get into this, I wanted to hit on just a couple notes real quick. When it comes down to size, 0 is primarily going to be for your space bikes or vehicles. Size 1 is generally going to be your single seat, like fighter type of ships. And size 2 is generally going to be your ships like your Cutlasses and your Freelancers and things like that. From class perspective, we've covered that a lot. The information is there if you actually want to see it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just quickly take a look at power plants. And what you see here is we've got your brand, your model, your cost, your size, your grade, your class, performance, signals, efficiency, and then where you can actually buy it. If there's a yes here, it means you can buy it. If there's nothing there, you cannot buy it at that location. Now, I did want to call something out real quick, and it's specific to these that I have in yellow. The Fire L Cascade and the Juno Fortitude, neither one of those actually have performance numbers that are listed. Basically, you just get a description of the item. But through some other means, you can kind of see what some of these performance numbers actually end up being. So then what we're left with making an assumption would be like the grade, the class, and the signals and the efficiency. The way that I actually did this was by comparing to others in the line and then kind of dictating where that grade would be based on what we know, and then end up getting the numbers. And basically what we see is on all of the Aegis power plants, they all share 115 on signals and 95 on efficiency when you look at the C and the D version. So I made the assumption that the B version is keeping that same trend, that we just see an additional 5 coming in on the performance. The same thing was with the Juno Starwork. We saw these basically being the same. Juno appears to be an industrial brand, so we think that's there. And based on the performance and what we've seen in some of the others, it was a safe recommendation that this was going to be a Class C. So if we really want to take a look at the breakdown, what you end up having is your performance numbers here are going to show basically how much power output you have, while signals is effectively going to show how much signals you're putting out there, your noise, how likely you are to be picked up. And those are going to be the main factors that you want to consider when you're taking a look at this. Now, when you look at grade, I've already mentioned this isn't really a factor. Down the line, how we make these recommendations is probably going to change, but you start to get an idea. And then you're going to start noticing that there's only a few options out there that are available at all locations, really being the 2 size 0 options that are currently in the game for power plants. So when we do this, one of the things that I like to do is really just, first I guess I'm going to sort it down to size, and we're going to really focus on size 1s here. But what I like to do is filter it down, and then I want to go ahead and sort it, to really give you a better idea of what the difference is. So performance will go, largest to smallest. And then you can see how this starts to break down. So what we have a range here of is 80 to 125, which is a pretty big jump, with kind of the middle ground being probably in this roughneck range, as far as like being around a 108. But then you really want to start making decisions based on the type of thing that you're trying to do. You know, are you looking for the most power period? Are you looking for the thing that puts out the least signals if you want to be stealthy? Are you looking for something that's going to give you a good balance like the civilian ones typically do, 100, 100, 100 across the board? And that's how we're going to start looking at these things. So if we jump over to shields, we can kind of see a similar thing. I've already filtered out size 2s, as you can see. And then you start kind of seeing how these things, vary. Now, in shields, what I did was I sorted by signals because I was considering stealth at the time. And you can see the range is really only from 95 to 105, which is a big difference between 80 to 125. But, the efficiency overall is going to talk about how much of this. So a more efficient shield is going to pull less power out of your power plant. And that's why you start seeing like the Ascension Shimmer, which is a stealthy shield. It doesn't give you a lot of performance. The signals are lower than all the others combined. Well, not combined. Is lower than all the others, but you end up getting the least power pull off, and you can see how those correlate as you go through these. So the ones that end up having better performance put out more noise, and they end up being less efficient to use overall. Coolers are a little bit complicated because we have performance numbers, which I think is really easy to say. This is how much heat it's going to take off of your weapons or off of your engines or whatever. This is going to be how you can prevent yourself from overheating. Now, through my testing, because we don't have signal numbers, but you can kind of monitor some of that from your ships. And the consistent thing that I found, whether this is true or not, is that you end up having lower IR signatures if you have a lower performance, which makes sense to a certain range. Where on the other hand, if you have a higher performance number, like the Aegis Polar here, for example, you're going to end up having a higher IR signature than a lower performing one, but it's going to take you a lot longer to actually reach overheating. So when you see performance, think about how effective it is from keeping you at overheating as opposed to what it does to your signal. So if it's better at signal, it's worse at cooling. If it's better at cooling, or if it's worse at cooling, it's better at keeping you off the radar. And then when we get to quantum drives, again, this isn't real relevant right now just because we don't have a lot we can do with any of this. That being said, what you can see is a vast difference in how much range they have. So max spool per distance, we can start here where you only can go 87,000 million kilometers. So it's a very long range. Even the smaller one there, all the way up to when you start talking size 2, 229 million kilometers, or 2 million kilometers. The range is like the scope of everything makes this all confusing, but you can kind of see it there. And then how much fuel you're using per 1 million kilometers. You can see, so basically the lower number, the more efficient you're going to be, hence the stealth one actually being lower. And there are some spreadsheets out there where I've actually seen that some of these actually have different speeds. And I took that into consideration for one of my recommendations just because it didn't really matter right now, but I threw that out there. But either way you cut it, these aren't really a big factor right now. So let's go ahead and dive into our recommended builds so you can kind of start seeing how I'm applying this information to logical builds that you may want to use. So with what we know, and through some of my own testing, I've put together a list of components for both ships that use size 1 and size 2 to get my recommended ships. Now, I didn't want to list out every ship because I could make a stealth Avenger, a full power Avenger, a cargo Avenger, and then do every other ship. It would be exhausting. So instead, find the category here that makes the most sense for you. Now, I do want to explain some of the methodology, though. Full power, I'm generally opting for whatever gives the best performance, period. And that really starts with having a power plant that's capable of powering all of those high-end components. So when we start talking about a full power fighter for size 1s, the Aegis Fire L Cascade appears to be the best, with maximum performance and what should be a lower signature than the competition rated Starheart, while both are sharing the same performance and efficiency. But there are some assumptions that I'm making on the Fire L that I've talked about before, so the Starheart may end up being the better or at least safer option. Now, the Force Wall for shields is by far the best size 1 shield in the game if you want the best performance, with pretty good signal and efficiency compared to the others. Now for coolers, if you just want performance, the Aegis Polar as a B-grade military cooler appears to give the best size 1 performance at 125. And when we start talking about quantum, I picked the Goliath based on its fuel usage and range, but honestly, it doesn't matter a lick right now. Now, when we look at stealth combat, I broke it down into ballistic or energy weapon loadouts because there's different requirements for coolers and power plants. So for an example, if you opt for ballistics, you don't have the same power plant needs, which means that I opted for the Delta Max, which is a stealth power plant with not a ton of performance but has lower signals than the others. Now on energy, I opted for the Zap Jet, which is a D-grade civilian power plant, but since wear isn't in the game yet, the grade doesn't matter. But basically it gives you better power output than the Delta Max and less signals than the majority of the others. So while it's not stealth, it's still stealthy. Now when it comes to shields, the difference in shield output only ranges in total from 95 to 105, so the difference is very minimal. Since we opted for a very stealthy power plant on the ballistics build and your weapons aren't using much of that power, you can then end up dedicating more of that to your shields, thus bringing the extremely powerful force wall into your ship while still kind of living in the middle ground on your signal noise. The stealth energy build is needing a little bit more efficiency when it comes to your shields. So instead of opting for the force wall, we're going to have the shimmer on board, which is the most efficient shield with the lowest signature to find that nice balance of performance overall. Now on coolers, we know that ballistics are very prone to overheating, so we went for a stealth class one that ends up having better cooling, being the vapor block. But on the energy weapons, we don't overheat as fast, so we went for the stealth with less signal noise, being the heat safe. Then we start to get a little bit more general. With stealth in non-combat roles, basically opting for the lowest signature options, period. Or with the cargo hauler, looking for good balance and defensive, good options. Racer is a pure performance machine, so grabbing what gives the best output, period, without combat considerations. And value build is about finding what performs well for a low price. So I'm not going to dive into the size 2s here because this video could go on forever, but it's there and the methodology follows the same that I did for size 1s. So there you have it. That's your comprehensive component breakdown, which hopefully gives you some good explanation, and you can kind of keep the resources online to reference now until I get a full write-up on the redacted page. If you guys have questions on any of this, please let me know. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.